Built to replace the highly successful Boeing 727, the 757 of 1982 would become one of the most successful models in the company's history, with over 1,000 examples of this machine being built during its 25-year production run, with units finding homes among some of the most prestigious carriers in the world. The origins of the Boeing 757 are owed entirely to the preceding Boeing 727 of the 1960s, a tri-jet model that took the world by storm, with over 1,800 units being built, with Boeing, satisfied with the success of the airliner, examining options to expand the platform during the mid-1970s, amid a time of high demand for newer, more efficient models in the wake of the 1973 oil crisis. To that end, the Boeing designers initially studied a stretched and modified version of the tri-jet that was dubbed the Boeing 727-300, but following extensive conversations with existing operators, the 300 concept was dropped in favor of a completely new design dubbed the Boeing 7N7, which would be a showcase for recent advances in construction techniques, together with improved high-bypass turbofan engines. Encouraged by the appetite among potential customers, Boeing launched the development of the 7N7 at its Renton factory in Washington state in March 1979, with the airliner soon being redesignated the Boeing 757, while being based on the fundamental principles of being more capable and economical than the 727. Initially, Boeing's design team proposed two models with fuselage lengths in general keeping with the earlier Boeing 727, including a short body and medium body example. But following the drafting of preliminary drawings, what was proposed to become the Boeing 757-100 strayed too close to the Boeing 737 in terms of size, while being more costly to operate, and thus the medium body model was released solely as the Boeing 757-200. A twin-engine approach was selected due to the greater fuel economics, immediately separating it from its tri-jet predecessor, and with a proposed length of 155 foot 4 inches, the 757-200 would be 2 foot 1 inch longer than the 727-200, but with a completely redesigned cabin, the designers intending that the new jet be capable of typically seating 239 passengers in a single-aisle configuration, 50 passengers more than the 727. With global oil prices rising rapidly in the second half of the 1970s, operating costs were paramount, and thus lighter materials were used, together with redesigned wings, thus allowing the 757's high thrust-to-weight ratio to permit takeoffs from shorter runways and airfields with hot and high conditions. Computer-aided design, originally conceived for the larger wide-body Boeing 767, was used for more than one-third of the 757's project drawings, while Boeing constructed a special assembly line at its Renton factory to produce the 757 as Boeing 727 production was gradually wound down prior to its launch. Early research findings were positive, with the production aircraft being 3,600 pounds lighter than originally specified, and, as a result, it chalked up a fuel burn rate that was 3% better than expected, resulting in a range increase of 200 nautical miles, this figure being so impressive that initial orders came from British Airways and Eastern Airlines, both of whom opted for Rolls-Royce RB211 535C engines. This marked the first time that a Boeing civilian airliner had been launched with power plants produced outside the United States, though Pratt & Whitney would also contribute to the 757's production run with the PW2037 turbofan, which Delta Airlines would later adopt, while a version of the General Electric CF6-32 was also promoted, but there was insufficient commercial demand, and the project was eventually abandoned. The prototype, registered November 757 Alpha, was rolled out on January 13, 1982, with the maiden sortie taking place on February 19th of the same year, certification by the Federal Aviation Administration following on December 21st, with the first customer delivery to Eastern Airlines taking place the following day. Keen to make a good impression with the 757, Eastern wasted no time putting its new flagship to work, with the inaugural revenue service of the 757 on January 1st, 1983. Followed a month later by British Airways commencing operations of the narrow-body for its London to Belfast link, where it replaced the flag carriers Hawker Siddeley Trident 3Bs. Among the earliest adopters were UK-based holiday charter operators Monarch Airlines and Air Europe, which both began 757 links later that year, while other European charter airlines, including Air 2000, Air Holland and LTU International, also joined the 757's customer list by the end of the 1980s. Initial customers of the type confirmed its improved dispatch reliability and quieter performance when compared to previous generation jets, with airlines reporting lower operating costs born out of improved fuel burn and the use of a two-crew cockpit. These figures compared favourably against the earlier Boeing 707 and 727, with the twin-jet burning 42% and 40% less fuel per seat respectively, the only notable downside to 757 operations being that the loading and unloading of a single-aisle aircraft of this size took longer than previous generation models, but this was largely cancelled out by improved route performance. Furthermore, despite a flurry of launch orders and impressive economics, the new narrow-body was not the instant success Boeing had hoped for, as even though no direct competitor existed for the 757, the relative stability of fuel prices at the time and the wider macroeconomic environment convinced many potential buyers to stick with their existing examples, resulting in a somewhat stagnating order book. However, by the late 1980s, fuel prices were on the rise once again, and carriers were re-examining their fleet portfolios, with Northwest Airlines placing an order for 20 aircraft, breaking a 3-year sales drought, although it was not until the end of the decade that orders per year edged closer to the 100 mark. Come 1990, customers in other parts of the world began to realize the potential of the 757 amid increasing airline hub congestion and the introduction of airport noise regulations at American facilities, thus seeing between 1988 and 1989, American and United Airlines between them place orders for 160 examples alone, with that figure doubled by carriers elsewhere in the world. Despite the sluggish start to sales, Boeing knew that they had a success on their hands based on feedback from early operators and passengers, with those handling the 757 at ground level being given the misleading impression that the aircraft was a wide-body, sitting as it does much higher than other comparable aircraft on its tall undercarriage. This design feature was necessary to accommodate the generously proportioned engines, which also appeared to be larger than needed, though in reality, the thrust they provide gives the aircraft a power-to-weight ratio exceeded at the time only by Concorde, and pilots often referred to its rocket performance, with the Boeing 757 capable of lifting off the runway in as little as 4,000 feet with a rotation speed of 140 knots. This exceptional power-to-weight ratio also helped with climb performance, with the 757 capable of comfortably climbing direct to its cruising altitude, while the comparable Boeing 737, even in modern guises, often requires a step climb procedure involving the aircraft reaching a given altitude to level off and burn more fuel to lighten the load, enabling it to later climb to the desired flight level. A further string to its bow is the 757's ability to fly over large bodies of water. As in a shift from its original purpose for primarily domestic operations, in 1986 the FAA approved RB211-powered 757s for extended-range twin-engine operations performance standards or ETOPS operations, the authorities basing their decision on the reliable performance record of the jets during extended transcontinental services in the United States. Additionally, the precedents set by the Boeing 767 were also a motivating factor, and thus, with the introduction of ETOPS, flights of 4,000 miles between Western Europe and the American East Coast were now viable, and while Boeing did not have transoceanic missions in mind for the narrow-body, it proved to be an extremely useful workhorse for carriers such as United in this ultra-competitive market. However, one side effect of the 757's design was that of wake turbulence, as discovered shortly after the entry of the airliner into service. An FAA investigation suggesting that early versions of the 757 caused more wake turbulence than a 4-engined Boeing 747, and was responsible for 2 fatal crashes involving general aviation aircraft, while causing several near misses with small regional turboprop airliners. The culprit was theorized to be due to its aft-loaded wing design, although the root cause was never formally established, while the later addition of winglets, originally designed to improve performance and fuel burn, unintentionally reduced wake turbulence, though because of this inherent problem, FAA air traffic control regulations were revised to require greater separation behind the 757 than other large category jets, and the model became the only narrow-body airliner of its class to be graded as a heavy. Another highly advanced but somewhat contentious topic during the 757 and 767's development was the reduction of the previous 3-crew cockpit to 2 crew, a natural response to improved technology, though this move courted the disapproval of pilots' unions, the 757 and 767 both sporting the same cockpit layouts in order to allow for commonality between the 2 models. While the 757 and 767 weren't the first Boeing models to sport a 2-crew cockpit, that having been predated by the 737, There was strong opposition from pilots' unions to removing the flight engineer's position, as noted during the delivery of the 737 to United Airlines, who insisted that three-crew operation be maintained on this airliner from its first delivery in February 1968 all the way to 1981. As a result of this pushback, the 757 nearly kept its third crew member when launch customer Eastern Airlines, under pressure from unions, agreed to retain the position, thus sparking a debate between the various representatives of the Airline Pilots Association, or ALPA, the main union that represented commercial pilots. When ALPA directors were allowed to view the initial design for the 757 at Renton during 1979, the representatives of Hawaiian Airlines and North Central Airlines declared their desire for two-crew operation on the McDonnell Douglas MD-80 that was also being developed at the time, with ALPA President John O'Donnell agreeing to have a presidential commission decide the crew complement issue during his re-election campaign. Thus, in 1980, the Presidential Commission came down in favor of two-crew operation, and the MD-80 as well as the Boeing 757 and 767 were both cleared for operation by two-man crews, as was the case when the first unit was handed over to Eastern Airlines on December 22, 1982. The decision to adopt a crew complement of two pilots, leading to the widespread implementation of this setup across all future airliners around the world. With the 757 having garnered the commercial success it deserved by the early 1990s, in 1996, Boeing capitalized on the 757's reputation by announcing at that year's Farnborough Air Show a launch order from German charter carrier Condor for a dozen of its stretched 757-300 variant. The 757-300 incorporated an extra 23 foot 4 inches compared to the original 757-200, offering capacity for up to 50 more passengers, while to help power the longest single-aisle twin-jet ever built, Rolls-Royce and Pratt & Whitney supplied uprated 535-24 and PW2040 engines respectively. The first 300 was rolled out on May 31, 1998, and completed its maiden flight on August 2 that year, the model entering service with Condor on March 19, 1999, with additional orders for the 300 being placed by several American operators, including Northwest Airlines, America Transair, and Continental Airlines, while Delta would later inherit 16 units following the acquisition of Northwest in 2008. One part of the world where sales never really reached their peak was in Asia, as despite a highly successful demonstration tour in 1982, many carriers in the region deemed the 757 too small for their booming traffic volumes, with the type's first Asian customer, Singapore Airlines, selling its 4 examples to American Transair after just 5 years, instead opting for the larger Airbus A310. The 757, however, did find a home in China with carriers such as China Southern and China Southwest, with the airliner proving to be a good fit for their medium-haul domestic routes, and was used to replace Hawker Siddeley Tridents formerly operated by CAAC, following its breakup into 6 regional airlines during 1988. Over the years, several 757s have also been acquired by corporate operators, with the US Air Force operating 8 which have the designation C-32A, a standard-build 757-200 altered for government use, effectively as a VIP transport, which replaced the Boeing 707-based VC-137 that was previously deployed. Normally, the C-32s convey the Vice President or other senior US government officials, but are occasionally used to transport the President when the standard 747 is restricted by airfield capacity, with 4 C-32Bs also being owned by the US Air Force. 2 of these are operated by the 150th Special Operations Squadron, which is part of the New Jersey Air National Guard, on tasks such as supporting FEST or Foreign Emergency Support Teams, while a further pair are assigned to the 486th Flight Test Squadron. Ultimately, production of the Boeing 757 would last until 2004, with 1,050 units being produced at Renton, 913 757-200s and 55 757-300s, the last example, Bravo 2876, rolling off the production line at the Renton factory on October 28th, but wouldn't be delivered to its customer, Shanghai Airlines, until over a year later on November 28, 2005, the 757's position in the market being replaced by the Boeing 737-900 and Airbus A321. One surprise role for the Boeing 757, however, has been its linchpin status among cargo airlines across the globe, with a healthy market existing for the conversion of ex-passenger units into dedicated freighters, which operate with widespread carriers including FedEx, DHL and UPS. Initially, in December 1985, a freighter variant was launched following an order for 20 examples from logistics giant UPS, while a passenger cargo 200M Combi was also officially offered, though in the end only a single example was built and delivered to Royal Nepal Airlines in September 1988 as 9 November Alpha Charlie Bravo, which featured a pair of Rolls-Royce RB211 engines. As with the passenger versions, the 757's cargo appeal is its relatively low cost of operation, as well as its ability to accommodate up to 15 standard pallets, together with capacious belly holds for smaller cargo, the typical capacity for the type being 31.5 tons, with a range exceeding 3,000 miles. Conversions from passenger to freight operation are typically undertaken by Precision Aircraft Solutions based in Oregon, ST Aerospace in Singapore, and Israel Aerospace Industries, with most examples being fitted with a glass cockpit and winglets, alongside a 134-inch by 86-inch cargo door that shares its design with the cargo doors fitted to the earlier Boeing 707 and 727. Another testament to the Boeing 757's exceptional design is its near-spotless safety record, with only 13 hull losses having been recorded, that resulted in a total of 575 occupant fatalities, though the accidents the 757 was involved in were among the most notorious in aviation history. The first fatal accident for a 757 took place on October 2, 1990, when hijacked Xiamen Airlines Flight 8301, a Boeing 737, swerved off the runway while landing at Guangzhou Baiyun Airport after the hijacker wrestled the controls off the pilot during short final. The 737 subsequently left the runway and struck a parked China Southwest Airlines Boeing 707-3J6B, likely damaging it, before slicing its wing through the fuselage of China Southern Airlines Flight 3523, a Boeing 757 waiting to depart for Shanghai, before flipping over onto its back and skidding to a halt, leading to the deaths of 46 people aboard the 757 and 82 aboard the hijacked 737. On December 20, 1995, American Airlines Flight 965, descending towards Cali, Colombia, crashed into a mountain in Buga during the night due to navigational errors by the flight crew. 5 of the 163 people aboard, together with a dog in the rear cargo hold, initially surviving the incident, but 1 additional passenger died of exposure after rescue crews took 2 days to reach the survivors. In 1996, 2 near-identical Boeing 757 accidents occurred, with Bergen Air Flight 301 on February 6th and Aero Peru Flight 603 on October 2nd, with Flight 301 crashing into the ocean near Puerto Plata in the Dominican Republic, with the loss of all 189 passengers and crew, while Flight 603 crashed into the ocean off the coast of Pasamayo, Peru, with the loss of all 70 on board. In both cases, obstructions to the pitot tube sensors and static vent sensors led to confused and misleading information in the cockpit. That, combined with these being overnight flights, led ultimately to their individual crashes, the Bergen Air 757 having been stored without the necessary covers for its pitot tube sensors, thus allowing insect nests and debris to collect within, while the ground crew at Lima, Peru, had left protective tape covering static vent sensors on the Aero Peru 757. Perhaps the most notable accidents for the Boeing 757 took place on September 11, 2001, when American Airlines Flight 77 and United Airlines Flight 93 both became involved in the terrorist attacks on the United States. Flight 77 being flown into the side of the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., killing all 64 on board and 125 on the ground. Flight 93, on the other hand, was hijacked and bound for Washington, D.C., when the passengers were informed by their loved ones of the earlier attacks by terrorists using hijacked airliners against the Pentagon and the World Trade Center in New York, leading to a passenger revolt in which the hijackers deliberately crashed the 757 near Shanksville, Pennsylvania, killing all 44 aboard. Another highly notable accident for the 757 was the Überlingen mid-air collision of July 1, 2002, when DHL Flight 611 collided with the Bashkirian Airlines Tupolev Tu-154 at night over Germany, with the 757's vertical stabilizer slicing through the Tupolev, causing the airliner to plummet to earth with the loss of all 69 aboard, most of whom were children en route to a school trip in Spain. The 757, now with 80% of its vertical stabilizer lost, struggled on for another 4 miles before crashing into a wooded area close to the village of Teisendorf, killing both members of the crew. The main cause of the collision being due to shortcomings on the part of the Swiss Air Traffic Control Service in charge of the sector involved, as well as ambiguities in the procedures regarding the use of traffic control avoidance systems on board both airliners. While the Swiss Air Traffic Controller on duty that evening, Peter Nielsen, was ultimately not charged for his part in the collision, having been deemed overworked due to several ATC stations being out of action that night, he would subsequently be murdered in front of his family 2 years later by Russian architect Vitaly Kaloyev, who had lost his wife and children in the crash and held Nielsen personally responsible, thus adding the final fatality related to this tragic incident. The latest incident involving the Boeing 757 took place on April 7, 2022, when a DHL Boeing 757 operating Flight 7216 crash-landed at San Jose, Costa Rica, after attempting an emergency landing due to a hydraulic failure, the cause of this failure still being under investigation as of 2024. Today, the Boeing 757 remains a fixture of the modern aviation scene, especially in cargo roles, while even in its traditional passenger form, the model plays a significant part for many major carriers, including United Airlines on transatlantic routes and Jet2 on high-density holiday flights to the Mediterranean. Such as a testament to the Boeing 757's superb design is the fact that Boeing continues to struggle developing a new model that can suitably fill the role that this airliner once occupied, with their proposed new mid-size aeroplane, sometimes referred to as the Boeing 797, remaining merely a concept, alongside proposals to restart 757 production, while the Airbus A321XLR otherwise fills the void. Therefore, until such time that Boeing can consider a viable brand new replacement for the 757 that can sell in the same numbers, the model appears destined for a bright future in the service of many important carriers across the globe, presenting a perfect mixture of performance and capacity that is neatly packaged into a compact but sturdy airframe.